Welcome to the Empowerment Show with Melissa Heisler. Every week, discover new personal choices with practical, inspiring guides. And now, here's Melissa.
Welcome to the Empowerment Show. I'm Melissa Heisler, Empowerment Coach at It's My Life, and it is your life. Live it. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Ginger Kadlec, and she's going to be talking about raising awareness about child abuse and neglect. Ginger is an impassioned child advocate, trainer, speaker, and child forensic interviewer. Ginger blogs about issues related to child abuse and its prevention at Ginger Kadlec, which is KADLEC.com. Welcome to the show, Ginger.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
And I'm thrilled to have you here. Child abuse is such a difficult subject to address. How do you approach it with families? And
well, sorry, it is a tough topic to discuss, and it's a huge topic actually. Right now, it's estimated that there are over 40 million sexual abuse survivors here in the United States, and it's also estimated that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18 years of age. And it crosses all socioeconomic boundaries. So no one is immune, if you will, from being impacted by sexual physical abuse or even neglect. In fact, neglect is the largest form of child abuse in the United States today. So as I've been involved in this topic and working on this issue, I really wanted to try and capitalize on the power of social media to help educate people on the realities of child abuse and what we can do as a community to try and prevent that and protect children from being abused. And so I started a website, gingerkadlec.com, and also write a blog once or twice a week and addressing child abuse-related issues, trying to give tips to parents about what they can do, just trying to help educate people about the realities of abuse. Because I'll tell you what, Melissa, when I first got into this, I had no idea how huge the problem is. And working with children, working with the families, seeing how it impacts all levels of our society, I've realized, there just needs to be something more that I can do. So started the website, and also I'm reaching out to adults through social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, just to try and raise awareness. So, because it's such a depressing topic, because it really is, it's hard to talk about, and it's not a lot of fun. I'm trying to do a blend, okay? So it's like one part facts, information, related articles, blogs, things like that to try and educate people and raise awareness. But then like 2 parts, positive stuff, inspirational sayings, things that can help motivate people and feel good about one another and just have each other's backs. So that's kind of my approach at this point, and I'm, still feeling my way through it as we get into it. I've been doing it for probably about 10 months now. So it's, seems to be going pretty well.
And I did notice that about your site. It's such a difficult subject to talk about, and your site is actually so joyful and positive that, I think people who just kind of go on there initially it wouldn't click for them.
Thank you for saying that. No, I'm really glad to hear that, because I don't want to turn people off, because it is a scary topic, and so, but thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that.
So the figures you gave are astounding. Are these historical figures? Has this always been, a certain percentage of the population, or from your experience, are you seeing this increase?
It's interesting. Over the past several years, the actual number of cases that have come into child advocacy centers, and I'll get back to what they do in a little bit, but the number of cases has actually declined over recent years, which is interesting. And there are different schools of thought as to why that's happening. But then there's also, on the opposite side, though, like here in Indiana, I believe that the cases that we're seeing, even like last year, it's starting to rise again. So you would think that in times of economic crisis that cases would go up, people are more stressed, that kind of thing. The actual number of interviews that were conducted at child advocacy centers decreased over the past several years. There was also some research done recently on Google searches, and the question being asked, do Google searches actually reflect the real child abuse epidemic. So people were searching, why does my dad hit me? Or why am I being beaten? You know, that kind of thing. And so those related searches actually dramatically increased at the beginning of the recession. So it's a hard thing to pinpoint, and it's hard to pinpoint because so often children don't talk about it. They don't disclose readily. And so a lot of abuse happens in the shadows. So we only know what we know. We only know the cases that are suspected or that have been confirmed. So, and I don't know if that helps at all.
It does. I think the other part of that is that usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but usually it is a parent or a relative or somebody of authority in the child's life, so that makes it even more difficult for them to go directly to a source.
So you were so spot on. In fact, especially for child sexual abuse, over 90% of children who are sexually abused either know, love, or trust their abuser. So it's not a stranger, typically. In some cases it is, but most cases it's not. It's someone who is in the child's circle of trust. It could be a parent. It could be a step-parent. It could be a boyfriend or a girlfriend of the parent. It can be a family member. It could be a brother or sister. It could be an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent. I mean, it could be a friend of the family. And you know, again, to your point, Melissa, you're so right about sometimes it's people that are in positions of authority that are, you know, well-respected. People that are sexual predators know what they're doing. I mean, they are master manipulators, and they are really good at convincing people around them that they're a good person. And then they get access to children by convincing the parents or the caregivers that, hey, I'm a good guy or I'm a good gal, and you know you have every reason to trust me with your child. So and it happens a lot.
I was going to ask you how parents can approach this difficult subject, but I wonder if we should also talk about if there are all these children going online looking for help. What is it that, I don't know, we can do as adults or that we can help children out with to be able to help them make it through this?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I wish there was a quick, easy answer for that, but there isn't. It's one of those things where, I shouldn't say it's not a quick answer, but it is an easy answer. The easy answer is through education and through talking with your kids and trying to empower them and building up confidence and that kind of thing. And that can start, when they're in diapers, right? You start. There are a lot of things that parents can do. I'm a big believer in soundbite parenting, and that's basically just talking with kids in little tidbits over a longer period of time about just reinforcing different messages. So for body safety, look at everyday moments like bath time, for example. So when they're young, you're giving them a bath. There are 3 things you can do with kids when you're giving them a bath. Number 1, teach them the proper names of their body parts: head, eyes, nose, mouth. And then talk about private body parts and what the proper names for those are as well. And also, when you're talking about body parts, reinforce some of the body parts everybody sees: your face, your hands, that kind of stuff. But other parts are private, and they're just for you. And those are just things you can just, through the course of conversation, reinforce with your kids, which is really pretty easy to do. And that's not talking about sexual abuse. That's not talking about physical abuse. It's not talking about dating violence. But those are all things that just help reinforce that message with kids at a young age. And then the other reason for talking with kids and using proper body part names is because in the event that they are abused, it helps develop a common level of or plane of understanding for people that they might be trying to disclose to. So, for example, there was a case where a little girl talked to her elementary school teacher about her uncle had been sexually abusing her. And she was scared to talk about it, but was talking to the teacher, and she mentioned that her uncle touched her buttons. Well, the teacher innocently thought she was talking about the buttons, just buttons on her jacket, and didn't even connect the two. And so there was a missed opportunity for that child to have been protected. But not the teacher's fault, but also not the child's fault. It's just one of those miscommunication things. So again, as parents, if we're teaching kids the proper body part names, it just helps empower them, right? And give them the tools that they would need to help keep themselves safe. The other thing that's really important, like during bath time, is to make sure you use a washcloth or a bath mitt, because sexual predators, who have access to children, who may be helping to give them a bath or teach them how to get clean, will prefer to just use skin-on-skin contact and won't use a washcloth. So again, parents, you can reinforce that, hey, this is how you wash. Always use a washcloth, and if somebody is washing you and they don't, then you need to let us know, or that kind of thing, just to let them know that it's not the right thing to do. So there's a lot of things that parents can do.
And I really like that. I like the hints that you're giving because, again, this is such a difficult subject, and you don't want to scare the children that this is going to happen. And for you to just say, it's proper to use a washcloth, let me know if somebody doesn't. They don't need to know that there's anything else going on, but it empowers them, which I love you using that word, to be able to take control of their body.
Exactly. Oh, you're absolutely right. And it's easy to do, and those are things that you can reinforce almost on a daily basis, right? And again, it's not an uncomfortable situation for parents. I mean, if parents are uncomfortable saying the names of proper body parts or proper body part names, just practice it. The more you say it, the more comfortable you get with it, and it really is okay, and it really works out okay. And then the other thing that parents can do, too, is encourage kids to talk with them if they are ever around someone that makes them feel uncomfortable, or if somebody does something that just makes them feel a little creepy or weird. And again, keeping that open line of communication is so important. Something else that we teach in a body safety class that I'm a volunteer instructor for called Smart Steps is that kids need to know that if they get special gifts from people, or if someone treats them as a special friend or gives them privileges that they don't give other kids, there may be not so good reason for that. And they let their parents know that that's going on. Something else for parents to kind of keep an eye out for, too.
And you've given some really great advice as far as that these are ways to prevent abuse from happening through the education, through just, I think, honest dialogue without the fear, just kind of understanding what's proper and what's not. Is there any other hints for educators or children or parents that you can share with us now?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Let's talk about educators, teachers, administrators. They really are often the front line for identifying child abuse. They see those kids day in, day out. In fact, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I've read some research recently where like a significantly higher number of teachers know about child abuse or are aware of it than law enforcement or child protective services and that kind of stuff, because they're there with the kids, right? It just makes sense. They're there with the kids day in, day out. And a lot of cases that are referred to child advocacy centers or that are investigated are a result of responsible teachers taking action, noticing something that's not right with the child, either a behavioral change, or they might actually see some physical signs of abuse. And oftentimes, teachers are in a position where, kids trust their teachers. They establish that close relationship. They're with me, almost every day of the week. And a lot of children will actually disclose abuse to teachers. And so, teachers, I believe in most states, are mandated reporters, so they have a responsibility to make sure that they let someone know, let authorities know if they are aware of abuse, or even if they suspect abuse. So teachers, there's so much that they can do. And from a school system perspective, an administrative perspective, offering body safety education classes in the schools is so crucial. I mentioned that I am a volunteer for a Smart Steps, called Smart Steps body safety program in the community where I live. And it's wonderful. We go into elementary schools. It's through a child advocacy center that I was involved with called Chassie's Place. And we go into elementary schools, talk to kindergartners, second graders, and fourth graders about body safety, about good touches and bad touches, what to do if somebody gives you a bad touch. What is a bad touch? We talk about the times when it's okay for somebody to see a private body part and when it's not. We talk about proper body part names. I mean, it's a wonderful program, and it's done in a way that's not scary, that really helps empower the kids. We have them practice saying no, like yelling it. And again, that's empowering too, just to be able to tell somebody, no, you can't touch me there. That's me. It's my private body part, and we talk about who they can go and talk to about it. And so anyway, so there's a lot of things like that. And there are a lot of good programs like that around the country. So that's something that educators can do. There are also a lot of good bullying and dating safety programs that are out there for older kids too. Just really, in my opinion, goes from really preschool all the way through high school. So just try and reinforce that message with kids. And then, again, with children, just empowering them to say no, helping to build their confidence and self-esteem, because predators, they will they pick their kids a lot of times. And there's so many cases of where where there's a grooming process that happens with predators. They will kind of test the waters, if you will, with a child. They'll start by seeing if they can touch them on a private body part, or see if the child will keep a secret, that kind of thing, and see if the child will go along with that. And if they do, then they take it a step further, and then that continues until the abuse is pretty severe. So, but if a child resists or says no, or says I'm going to tell, or things like that, oftentimes, 9 out of 10 times, maybe higher, the predator will stop dead in their tracks. So it's really important, again, to just make sure the kids they feel empowered, like if they have the right to say no and they can protect their bodies themselves. So anyway, hope that go on and on.
That definitely helps, and I love how it's really a matter of self-esteem. If the child feels empowered, feels strong enough to talk up to an adult, knowing what's right for them, versus being embarrassed or afraid of an adult or an authority figure, that's really what we're talking about. So just anything to build up that self-esteem, I think, is helpful.
You're absolutely right. Spot on. Absolutely. And there's something else parents can do, too. I recently was introduced to an author named Janine Sanders. I believe she's out of Australia, and she wrote a book that I think is awesome. It's called Some Secrets Should Never Be Kept. And no kidding, it is Body Safety 101 based in medieval times with a maid who is working for the king, who has a son. She's a single mom. She brings the son to the king's castle when she's doing cleaning and stuff, and then the king befriends the son. It's beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, and it's just, again, I would recommend it as a book for parents and schools to get to help educate kids about body safety. She did a wonderful job with that. Again, the book should never be kept.
The book is Some Secrets Should Never Be Kept. And is there a link on your website with that, as well as the Smart Steps programs, or is there somewhere that people can find this information?
I don't have that on my website, and I should. I'm glad you just recommended that, Melissa. I will do that. I will put the link on my website. Janine, it's Janeen, Sanders is the author's name. She's on Facebook. She's got her own website, that kind of thing, too, but I will put a link up for the book. And then Chachi's Place, with the Smart Steps program, yes, there are. Chachi's Place is kind of all over my website. I love the Child Advocacy Center. It's wonderful. So,
one of the things I did see on your website, and I'd love you to talk about this, was a story about a 10-year-old girl from the Philippines who captured with it 1,000 online sexual predators.
Can you believe it? I read that and I thought, what? How in the world did that happen? Yes, there is a group out of the Netherlands called, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Terre de Home, and it's an international federation that got together to try and address this. It's an international problem of online predators. Online predation is huge, totally massive. In fact, the UN and the FBI estimate that there are about 750,000 sexual predators online at any given moment. They're all over the place. And so this group decided, it's a small group, small federation, decided, okay, you know what, we've got some technology we're going to try out. And they basically used, you got to watch the video because it's so cool. It does a better job of describing this than I ever could. But they basically used the human body, and they did points and stuff, and they created this digital 10-year-old girl, and they named her Sweetie. And they put her out in chat rooms. So it wasn't a real child. It was a digital rendition of a child, of a little girl. Put her out in chat rooms immediately. She was bombarded with requests from men around the world, to do things online. And so they call it webcam child sex tourism, where basically children from poor countries, either by themselves or, by someone else making them do this, either a trafficker or their parents or whoever it is, and oftentimes it's children from impoverished countries, will go online and do sexual acts online for someone to pay. So they've got like a payment system set up, and someone will give a credit card number, and then kids do whatever the person asks them to do, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, so they, within a 2-month period, and this just happened back in November, I think it was. It was amazing. Within a 2-month period, they were able to identify 1,000 pedophiles through their IP addresses, through different information they gave online for payment, through just a variety of means. And what's kind of scary, Melissa, is that a quarter of those were people from here in the United States. So, and then there were some other countries, obviously, other places too, but we had the biggest bulk here in the U.S. So, so this group, this federation, was basically, they did this almost as an experiment to say, hey, you know what, we don't have unlimited resources. You know, we're just this little federation. Imagine what could happen if you get a lot of international backing on this and get some real funding put to this. Think of how many online predators would be able to capture. And so the possibilities are really huge. And that's the 1,000 was just based on, I think, the stats from November. I mean, I'm sure they've been able to probably identify even more people as a result of that sting. So I was blown away when I read that story. I thought that is really cool technology, and how good that they're using that technology to try and do something good to help protect children. So
I think it's fantastic that they were able to use technology and not a real child, because I know, in the past it was either a child or a young woman who would look young enough. And so now they're able to use technology and not have somebody go through the abuse themselves. And
exactly.
It's amazing that they caught 1,000 people, but I'm hoping too that this being online, that the word will get around and will make them much more cautious about going to sites, and it may have an impact beyond just the 1,000 people they found.
You are so right. That is so very true. And I think it's a wake up call too for a lot of people probably. And the thing is, what's unfortunate is that the internet makes it so easy. It makes it easy for predators to go out there, and a lot of people think that they're immune. They're behind the screen and they're not going to get caught and that kind of thing. And I don't know. I'm impressed. I'm continually impressed by law enforcement and people that are involved in internet task forces and that kind of thing at their knowledge and their ingenuity. There are also, this isn't anything new, but there are groups that will go out, detectives, investigators that go out and they will pose as a 12-year-old girl or a 15-year-old boy or whatever it is, and also try to help catch predators that way. But this technology is just, I think it opens the door for so many good things to come from that.
Absolutely. And I'd like to bring the conversation back to home, because some of the stats that you had on the site, I think it was 73% of victims don't tell anybody that they're being abused for at least a year, and that another 45% of victims keep it to themselves for over 5 years. Is there something that we can talk about to help parents or educators, or, I have 6, 7 now nieces and nephews, to be able to help us suspect or have an idea that there may be something going on?
It's a really great question, Melissa. It can really be tough for kids. I mean, there's a variety of reasons that children keep that to themselves and don't disclose. And things like maybe they've been threatened by the perpetrator. Either themselves, they could be threatened themselves, or perpetrators will also make threats against their family, friends, and a lot of times they're pets, believe it or not. There's that close connection between children and pets, and that they are often used as toys in abuse scenarios. All kids sometimes don't tell because they, really love the person, and they know that there are circumstances, like let's say that it's a stepfather abusing a child. The child is aware of the relationship between stepdad and mom and doesn't want to hurt mom's feelings, that kind of thing. So that sometimes comes into play. There are a lot of scenarios where you've got a younger child and an older adult, right? And the child really is in love with the adult and doesn't want to, it's a Romeo and Juliet thing. doesn't want to get the adult in trouble. Sometimes predators will, convince kids that nobody's going to believe you if you tell, and it's all your fault that this happened. You made me do this, kind of thing. Then grooming. Sometimes kids don't even know that it's not the right thing to do because they've been groomed from a young age, and they think that's just how life is. So there's a variety of reasons that kids don't disclose. Again, this is the whole reason for trying to educate kids and kind of help expose them in different areas, like especially through school, to things that may not be normal or right or acceptable, that their bodies belong to them. So it can be tough for kids to disclose, period. That's one of the reasons, or there's several reasons that kids don't say anything for a long time, if they do at all. In fact, I just heard from someone on Twitter this week who shared that, they didn't say anything about it for 10 years. And there are some people that just now as adults, are starting to come out and acknowledge their abuse. It's just a hard thing. It's a hard thing for survivors to do sometimes. In terms of parents being able to recognize signs and that kind of thing, again, that can really be hard. Because for a lot of kids, it's normal to be normal. And a lot of kids will just want to go on like things didn't happen and will behave in that way and will still be friendly around their perpetrator and, that kind of thing. So a lot of them just want to keep life as it's been and don't want to, let on that anything's happening. But for some children, though, there are warning signs, and there are things that parents can look at and see that, as triggers or things that could be potential problems. And here's a few of them. And this doesn't necessarily mean that a child is being abused. It could mean other things as well. But things like changes in eating or sleeping habits. If a child suddenly starts bedwetting when they are past potty training age. If they suddenly seem like they are frightened of certain people or are nervous around certain people when they weren't before, that's definitely reason to have a conversation with your child. If there's plummeting, to your point, self-esteem. If they were feeling confident, and then all of a sudden, their personality has changed or their grades have dropped, that kind of thing. That's usually a sign of something's going on. If they have advanced sexual knowledge, which happens a lot, kids that are exposed to either things that have happened to them or things that they've seen, because that happens frequently. Sometimes kids will, be introduced to masturbation if they excessively masturbate, that kind of thing. That can also be a function. Also, we also see a lot of cases where children are molesting other children. And that is, for us, especially if they're younger in age and they start sexually acting out towards other kids, that is usually kind of a big warning sign that, okay, something's wrong, something's happened to this child, because it's a learned behavior. It's not something that is necessarily instinctive. So those are some of the things that parents can look for. Again, those are not necessarily indicative of abuse, but they can be warning signs that, hey, you need to really kind of just explore and step back and, maybe have a conversation with a child or have your child talk to somebody.
Thank you for sharing those, because I think a lot of those are, like you said, it may not be sexual abuse, but a lot of those signs are also that there may be something else going on with the child. So I think that's really powerful to share. Can you also share with us if, unfortunately, there is a case of abuse that the parent or the educator finds out, what advice can you give to children and parents to help them deal with this really difficult situation?
Thanks for asking that. I think that the most important thing, number one thing to remember, if whether you're a parent, you're an aunt, I'm an aunt also, or just someone who a child is disclosing to, the most important thing to do is believe the child. Believe the child. As the child begins to tell you what happened, you may think, oh, there's no way. Oh, that person would never do that. Oh, that could never happen. Don't let the child know you're thinking that. Just believe them. Listen. More damage is done by someone not believing a child than believing them. And trust me that if that allegation is acted upon and the adult is responsible enough to go and take action to protect the child, the facts will come out in the course of the investigation. That'll be figured out. That's not for you to necessarily have to worry about at that point in time. The most important thing you can do is believe the child and listen. The other thing to do is just to remain calm, and that can be really hard, especially if you're the person and let's say it's your spouse who's the abuser, or it's a father, or it's a sister, or it's one of your own children abusing your other child, that kind of thing. It can be really, really, really hard. And so just do everything you can to just kind of hold yourself together, remain calm, listen, try to ascertain basic details. Okay, who's the perpetrator? Tell me in basic terms, and don't get too detailed, child, but in basic terms what happened. find out where it happened, because jurisdiction in the course of an investigation is kind of important to know. So where did it happen? And if you can ascertain when it happened, that would be great too. That's sometimes harder with younger kids, but with older kids, they can typically, their sense of time and that kind of thing is a little bit clearer. So, but get those basic details. Then the next thing to do is to make sure that the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, does not have access to the child. So if the child's telling you and the perpetrator's in the home, you need to get the child out of there ASAP. Don't tell the perpetrator what's going on, just get the child and go. So make sure that the child is safe. And then after you make sure that the child is safe, contact authorities. Call the National Child Abuse Hotline, contact local law enforcement, contact local child protective services, get an investigation started. And that can be really hard for the person who's, making that call too, because they've got, oftentimes, again, over 90% of abusers know the kids, right? So they're in that family circle in some way, shape, or form, and it can be really hard for the person making that call to make that call, but it's vital that be done. And then hopefully, if there is a child advocacy center in your area, the child will be taken and interviewed there. And child advocacy centers, that's a whole other conversation, but in a nutshell, they are child-friendly, neutral groups or organizations that bring together professionals on a multidisciplinary team. So ideally, the child comes it's rather than going to a police station to be interviewed, in a sterile room that's kind of scary, they go to this wonderful place that has murals on the walls and stuffed animals and a fish tank, or, some things that are very child-friendly so that they feel comfortable when they're talking about this, because it's a tough thing to talk about. And then members of the MDT, or the multidisciplinary team, would come in. They observe the interview from another room. And then an interviewer, like this is partly what I do, I'll go in and I'll talk with the child, I'll wear an earpiece, and then the team is watching through closed-circuit television, and they can ask me questions to ask to the child. And there's a protocol that we follow when we do the interviews. Again, very child-friendly. It's led by the child. We ask questions, but we don't put words in the child's mouth. It really needs to come from the child. What happened? Tell me about that. Just those kinds of things. So, again, it's done in a way that is hopefully not traumatic for the child, or reduces the trauma, because again, it's hard to talk about that kind of thing. So anyway, so hopefully there's a child advocacy center close to you. And the easiest way to find out if there's a child advocacy center close to you is just Google it. So just type in Child Advocacy Center and then enter your location, your state, your city, your county, whatever it is, and see if there's one close to you. And then finally, if there is an allegation of child sexual abuse, I am big on medical exams. And even if it's just a wellness exam, I think it's important to see not just a family physician to do this, but to see what's called SART certified, sexual assault response certified professional, because they are skilled and trained in forensic collection of medical data. So they also know how to treat a victim of abuse. So those medical exams, they can be invasive too, right? They're just scary, but they are done in a very child-friendly way that really, again, helps to reduce the trauma of the exam. And they also know to look for, they work with the MDT to get information about whatever might have happened. So, for example, one of the things we like to do too, ideally, in a perfect situation, if a child is an alleged victim, we would have the Child Advocacy Center interview, the forensic interviews first. So a child would come in, MDT would be in the other team watching and helping the interviewer. And then if there are clues or things the child says that we can then turn over to the medical team, that's ideal, because then they can collect evidence based on what the child may have reported. For example, there was a case where a perpetrator licked a child behind her ear, and she disclosed that during the interview with the forensic interviewer. And because of that, the SART professional, the nurse, was able to swab behind the child's ear and collect DNA. So it was, again, more corroborating evidence that abuse had happened. So anyway, that was a long explanation. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that's so helpful. I think that the best thing you said was to remain calm and trust your child. And that's all you need to do. And the third step is to call in the professionals. You don't have to be judge and jury. You don't have to, do any of that. There are experts there who can help you through the process. So just be there for your child and give the child to the right experts and let them sort it out. And it felt really empowering when you were talking about that, especially the child advocacy centers that give that safe environment. I think a lot of times parents probably don't want to report. It's not just the shame of reporting a friend that might not have done something, but it's also, do I want to put my child through this? And to hear the process at one of these centers, it doesn't sound, it sounds cathartic, not like another attack of abuse. So
You're right.
I appreciate you going through that. To close, we just have a couple minutes here. I know that probably the two other things that unfortunately after abuse happen are the shame that the child experiences and the guilt that the parent feels for not protecting their child. Are there any tips or resources that you can share with us about that?
Absolutely. And you're spot on again. I mean, there's guilt, there's shame, there's embarrassment. There's so many things that people go through with everybody that's involved. Because it impacts the entire family. It really does, and possibly friends and, the circle beyond there. One of the members of an MDT typically will be victims advocates or counselors. And I know after a child is interviewed, we always refer them to professional resources so that they can talk about what they've experienced and they can help begin to just heal. And so there are a lot of professionals out in the community that are able to do that. And for some families, I know here in Indiana, there is a victim support fund that is accessible to people so that it doesn't become a financial burden for them to seek counseling. And I just think the counseling piece is crucial after someone has disclosed abuse. And it can go on for months, it can go on for years, it can go on for as long as that victim or that survivor needs it to go on. So, and along with the family. So again, thank you for asking that question because the back end piece of that and the healing piece is vital.
Well, thank you for sharing that information and all the information today. Again, this is a really difficult topic, but I love how you're presenting the information and removing the stigma from it, that people can find help, that there are ways that we can prevent it, and that there are resources to help you through the process if unfortunately, there is a case. So I truly appreciate all that you've shared today and all that you do. I think it's great service that you're giving.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, and thank you so much for helping to raise awareness and profiling this, because it touches so many people all over the country, all over the world, actually. So thank you for your support, Melissa. Truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for any of our listeners, viewers today, if you have questions for Ginger, go ahead and put them on Facebook.com/The Empowerment Show or Twitter.com/Empowerment Show, and we can start a dialogue going with Ginger and be able to hopefully share some resources with you.
I would love that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Join Melissa Heisler next week right here at The Empowerment Show. Join the conversation at Facebook.com/The Empowerment Show or Twitter.com/Empowerment Show.